turning them into fermentable sugar. The yeast can only eat very, very simple sugars, like maltose is one of them, which is the main one we get in beer. Fructose we get from fruit. Sucrose. Yeah, table sugar, really simple sugars. So the dextrins, the big long sugars, the yeast can't
break down.
Yeah, they can't digest it. So the enzymes at this temperature chop in the alpha amylase and the beta amylase. They either chop it in half. So then instead of one long chain, you've got two chains. But the trick is you've got now instead of two ends, you have four ends. And the other amylase eats at the ends and chops the ends off. So I'm trying to remember what the temperature regimes are that they work, but I know
it's like 149 to 154.
Yeah, the beta amylase works at the lower temperature below 152 is like right in the middle, and the beta amylase chops the ends. And the alpha amylase works at the higher end, and it's the one that chops them in half.
170
and makes
174.
Yeah, but 152 is the temperature that's like right in the middle.
So what were we at?
I think it's 151. If you mash at the lower temperature, you're going to get a drier beer because you're going to make more fermentable work. So that's one of the ways that brewers control, how the beer comes out.
Temperature.
Yeah, it's the temperature during the mash process.
I would say that it's like smoking meat. Like if you like really good smoked meat, like chicken, brisket, pork, that temperature is probably the most key thing without drying the meat out or undercooking it. And I always equate that to brewing beer because I'm an avid smoker, and I knew that I would be able to be decent at cooking beer because I can control temperature on smoking. You smoke some malts? Smoke malts?
Yeah.
Just like kiln it or whatever?
It's the Germans, they call it Rauchbier, and it comes out of Bamberg for the most part. It used to be the way all beer was in the day, back before the indirect fired kiln. Well, that's how they do it, is they smoke the malt over wood, and it gets that character in there. You use different woods. But the fresh smoked malt, you can control it a lot better. If you go to Hart's, you're buying malt, when it was fresh, it was really nice and smoky,
yeah.
but you don't know how long it's been there. Hart's isn't going to tell you.
Who would? Who would? So it's probably beer 30 anyway. I'm going to give this a little stir, and I'll end up adding a little bit more water from our boil kettle inside of there. Because it'll reduce a little bit, but you'll see it's actually still working its way in there. This will be a dark beer.
The one thing about cast iron is when it fails, it fails what we call catastrophically.
The only thing about plastic is that...
No, I'm
talking about the table.
The table that's cast iron.
Yeah, we need to just build a welded frame here.
Something, man.
It's home brewing though, you know what I mean? Where you're waiting on accidents to happen.
Is that a byline? Can we put that on the website as a tagline? Home brewing, where you're waiting for
accidents to happen. It's not commercial brewing where you're ready for everything. No. Like you're ready for the story at work on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully you get into work on Monday, but...
It's not if you'll be burned, it's where you'll be burned.
I guess it's not as bad as, deep frying turkeys,
Yeah, in your garage, when it closed, using propane tanks.
Yeah.
Collapsing. I think that's one of the most underrated...
You're still dealing with a hot,
That's one of the most underrated deaths.
Yeah, I was going to say, just pull it up on YouTube.
What could go wrong? 400-degree boiling oil, and propane open flame with, one of these flamethrowers. This is
take it out of the
like
freezer, throw it in, it'll thaw out.
Yeah. What could go wrong in your carport?
Every year though.
Yeah. Every year. You just can't get the word out. Frozen turkey, hot oil, no.
I did it once, and we didn't have an
like Mythbusters.
But I did it, and I said, I'm not going to do this again. You're just asking. And I worked 12 years in the industrial gas business where everything is hazardous. So, I was a plant manager too, so we used to do safety audits and stuff like that. So that's why, and I'm an engineer, so that's why I know about the properties of cast iron and gravity.
Then get enough room for one more gallon.
But is it ferrous or ferric oxide? That's the problem.
Well, it's just a brittle metal, and when it goes, it goes. That's the problem with it. You can see it giving a little bit. You can see when the table moves, it's giving a little bit, but But cast iron just brittle. It's just one of those metals that, you know, it's not going to bend. Well, it'll bend a little bit, but it'll when it goes, it'll
mash for an hour.
And you've got only got 3 legs there, and when one of them goes, those arms.
For one here.
Yeah.
You can kind of look at our color of the beer, which we'll do in a second. Half hour into a mash, half an hour into the mash. We're at 151 exactly. If you want to hop up and take a look, but first,
No pun intended.
I
could malt it.
we're just going to test our mash. I use a refractometer because I don't waste nearly as much wort using a refractometer than you would using a hydrometer. It's a little extra step that you have to do in converting brix, which a refractometer measures into potential gravity. And we're really, really low right now. We're at like a 4 brix, and we still have to add water. So like Ed was saying, our malt bill.
At least it wasn't this.
Yeah, our malt bill is really light.
Okay, does that work? No.
It should work. You do it on this camera.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I can see it. You can see it? So we're really light right now. Which doesn't say that our beer is bad. It just says our beer doesn't have a lot of alcohol. Or potential sugar. Yeah, potential alcohol. Which is why I supplement, and you know, I keep a good eye on it during the mash to know how much I have to supplement. And I'm not going to supplement until we go into our boil. So this gives me a good indication of how much I need to, and we're probably going to need to add that entire bag to our boil of DME Pilsner, so it doesn't change the color too much. Always keep the lightest DME you have, or they have, the home brewer shop has in stock, so that it doesn't change the color of my beer.
You can't get lighter, you can go darker. It's easy to get darker.
It's easy to get darker.
back lighter.
Yeah.
Well, what we're doing here, this is called the refractive index. Refraction is the bending of light. So you ever notice when you put like a stick in water, the stick looks like it's broken, but it's really not.
Yeah.
Right? So that's refracting. The light is traveling actually at a different speed through the water, slows it down. And so if you have sugar, it changes it. This is very commonly used in Florida in the orange juice business. They check it. And brix is a unit of measure. I don't know exactly what it goes, but it's 4 times the original gravity is the way I look at it. So original gravity, or specific gravity, is the density relative to water. Water is 1.000. So you're shooting for what, a 1050 beer? So that'd be 1.050, or 5% more dense. And when you add sugar, it increases the density. Just like, I don't know if anybody's made candy sugar. It gets really heavy, but the volume doesn't grow. It gets more dense. So that's what your potential alcohol is, because the reaction is that the yeast eats the sugar and produces 2 things: ethyl alcohol and CO2, both of which are good in beer. So 1050, and the way I do it, to just keep the math easy, is roughly 1050 would be about a 5% beer. Just move the decimal point.
Yep.
So brix is a fourth of that. So 10 brix, or let's say 40, or 10 brix would be a 1040 beer. Right. So you're going to be what, 12 and a half brix would be a 1050 beer. Would be the way to look at it that way.
I've never known.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So it's a fourth.
A fourth, right? Yeah. Or multiply by 4. Either way, divide by 4. Yeah.
Killer.
It's a factor of 4.
Now I don't have to go to brewhead.com.
Yeah. I was going to make that table for you.
It's just that's a real rough, real easy rule of thumb. I think rule of thumb comes from brewing.
From beer. Yeah.
Right. You know that story?
No.
Okay, had that in
So in the old days, before thermometers were used in the brewery, they wanted to get to 150 degrees for the mashing. Well, the brewmaster would literally put his thumb in the mash to check the temperature, and that's where rule of thumb comes from. So another thing you do too is you could test. I don't know if you do the iodine test, testing for conversion. Yeah, you can either use a tincture of iodine, or you said you don't use amberdyne, but you could use either one. But basically, if you were to put a drop of the wort in take a drop of wort, put it on usually I'd use it like a ceramic plate, white small dish.
Yeah.
And then take a drop of the iodine, it'll turn black at the beginning because what it's doing is it's a reaction with starch.
Okay.
And when you get the conversion completed, there won't be any starch left. And you'll see that it won't turn black like that. So that's a way to test as well.
Okay.
And it's probably more direct because you're measuring the conversion. Which is what you're doing there. You're converting the starches and the big sugars into fermentable sugars. That's the whole process.
Yeah. I knew it was like parts per million of sugar and water.
It's more than parts per million. Yeah, it's a percentage. Actually.
Percentage.
Yeah.
So, why use a refractometer instead of a hydrometer, other than saving wort?
Yeah, I thought you had one here.
I did.
This is the hydrometer tube.
This is the hydrometer tube and my bag's not out here, right? I'll be right back.
So this is a hydrometer, and this is a hydrometer tube. So you put the sample in, and you would put the tube in there, and it will float. It's buoyant. It basically measures the buoyancy. So, and you can see it's calibrated, and 1.000. If you were to have just water in here, it would float at 1.000. And as you add sugar, it goes up. And you could also measure it during the fermentation process, and you'll notice it drop back down again. Now, wine will go below 1 actually, because
Yeast is eating sugar.
well, beer will never go below 1. Beer, it's called attenuation. How much of the fermentation do you attain? With wine, you actually can go below 1. And the reason is that, first of all, it's a very simple sugar. It's a fructose, right? The fruit sugar from grapes. Very fermentable, and you have about 10% alcohol with wine, give or take. And alcohol is less dense than water, so that's how you can go below 1. With beer, you typically get 75% attenuation. So if you start at 1050, you'll get down to about 10, 12 and a half. Typically. Some more, some less, but that's a typical attenuation. So that's hydrometer. So it's just a different way of measuring. And so you have to know.
You obviously use a lot more.
I use
you obviously use a lot more wort than you do.
Yeah, there's a few drops. You have to know the original gravity and the final gravity. That's how it doesn't tell you. It tells you the potential, but you have to know how much you fermented out to figure out what your ABV, alcohol volume is.
These things are like $6 at Hart's. They break really easy, so buy 2 of them.
These don't break as
No, they don't break as easy.
Unless you drop them from a ladder, which fortunately